Well, we are live, motherfuckers.
It's so fucking stupid.
You're stupid.
I'm literally writing you an email.
You should have seen
now.
my breakdown with Trey, just calling you guys all sorts of names, being like these.
I puckered up a little bit. It made me very uncomfortable.
That's how he likes it.
That's my love language, though, right? If I dog cuss you, it means I love you.
Yeah, how's that working for you, Pete?
That's how people get away with it.
Well, yeah, you're right, Craig. That's not working so well in my life.
It's not working so well. All these people I love are leaving my life. I wonder what I'm doing wrong.
Well, I've only got the bandwidth for like 5 friends anyway, so it's
true.
It's
true.
good. It's good.
Is that honest?
Cleaning house.
You can count your friends on 5. What?
Peter, what type of shirt is that? I like that shirt.
It's got flamingos on it.
He's getting ready for Cabo.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I'm getting ready for the
Cabo
Cabo.
stairs.
Practice.
Yeah.
It's good work.
Yeah, you look good, bud. And look at you, Trey, all polished with a
Look at that. Yeah, no
gold
shit.
watch. Every time you show up in this podcast, like a new Trey.
Yeah, I got one more item of clothing. Soon I have brand new underwear, no holes. That shit's gonna
I
be
know.
amazing.
I mean, imagine if you
moving on
looked
up in the
that
world.
way, everything you're wearing, but the shirt was actually ironed and not look like you brought it out from
I'm
your
impressed.
hamper.
This is fucking cleaners. What are you
No,
talking
it's
about?
not, bro.
Yeah, it is. I undid it from the plastic.
Get
Oh,
close.
that's
Get
the
close to the.
greatest
Get
feeling.
close to the
Like,
camera.
That's the great.
Okay,
feeling.
it looks
Undid
okay.
it.
Good.
It's an Oxford, Craig. You need to learn your fabrics.
No, listen.
It's thicker.
You know it's almost as good as a fresh shirt. Actually, it's a little bit better than a fresh
Here we
shirt.
go. Here we go. Check.
Ready?
check.
What?
Warm undies from the dryer.
Warm undies.
I take a warm towel over warm undies.
What?
Warm towel for
So,
me.
yeah.
Warm towel.
I agree on the warm towel. Warm undies will make you take a leak.
Yeah, I live in the. I work in the tropics, man. I don't want warm undies.
Okay.
I
Well,
want cold, crisp.
maybe
We're
I'm
used to the warm.
only one of the 3 of you guys who has seasons. So
True. That's very true.
You don't really have a lot of seasons. Though.
We're excited because right now it's I don't know what's the temperature right now. What do we got? Like
It's cold.
90s? It's gonna get cold. It's gonna go down into like the 70s.
oh,
Yeah.
That's what we call
Frigid.
fall. in
Yeah.
Houston.
That's why I wore a long sleeve shirt to prepare.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Well,
I
in
don't know
Florida,
what's gonna happen
we
at
got
1
2
o'clock today.
seasons. Florida, we got January and summer. So
Yeah.
that's all we got here.
we're excited.
It's
about-
87. It's cold as hell here.
The humidity about 100.
hey, J Cal, you
102.
got intros today or no?
I do. You want me to roll? Are you gonna roll with music, or are we just gonna kick?
No, the link Nazi doesn't want to do it that way.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forget.
The
All right,
link
that's all we
Nazi.
get.
That's
Roll
all we
with
get.
it.
Ready to go.
Yeah, you're
All right,
keyed
I
up,
want to
Dwight.
welcome
Let it rip.
everybody to the Bulletproof Dental Practice Podcast, the whole name that is, where we have consent that we have paid our debts in creating quality dental practices, and we have the scars to prove it. So let's get started with the fearsome 3 that are joining me today. We're going to get going. So Halloween is upon us, but the only thing he fears is being irrelevant. He should run for office, but he has too many skeletons in his closet. This gas-guzzling, gun-toting defender of private practice keeps us all safe, even if his conversations about our practice vision makes us chafe. You can always expect the unexpected, as he always finds a way to boast, even about this roast. His social interactions to you makes you never feel alone. But know if you're in his presence, you'll always be second to his phone. He blazes trails for a living and knows no bounds to his giving. Please help me welcome Craig Spodak to the pod, everyone.
Sorry, Dwight. I didn't catch that. You mind doing it over again? I was on Instagram.
This is
Sorry.
amazing.
That was awesome.
It's all good, my man. It's all good. And in the
Dude,
end,
my
we're-
LF1 makes me feel like you don't like me right now.
Yeah,
When I see you in Cabo, you better hug me, buddy.
I will. I'll hug you big time. I'll see you in Houston as we fly together.
Okay, good. I want a big.
No need
inappropriately
for a
long
big, no need for a big intro, but let's tiptoe around his crypto since selling to him is whack, and he definitely didn't want to listen to his friend Spodak. He is the enterpriser with an insatiable desire where arbitrage is his game. So don't expect him to remain the same. Once the opportunity is depleted, you can expect his equity to be unseated. A private DSO may be his dream, but expect him not to be seen. He's the quiet CEO whose dentistry is long past, but he builds your operations to be steadfast. He's the practice generator and the profits allocator. Please give a warm welcome to the dictator, Peter Boulden.
That was so kind, Dwight.
Pencils
Thank
down.
you.
That was lovely.
Pencils down. That was so
nice.
kind.
Full
That was
stop.
nice.
That was good.
Pencils
Full
down.
stop.
would
Full stop.
come. And lastly, but of course, the risk taker and bar breaker, and with the disgust for detail, with enough practices to be considered for retail. When scaling his efficiency, he makes no concessions, which is why he's the safest in a recession. His calm makes you wonder if he's even awake or if his agreeable comments are just simply fake. The truth is he's just bored with you, but too much of a Texas gentleman to tell you to. His practice is a family episode of The Succession, but his Rocky Balboa video will make you consider his ganja possession. From Brenham to Cypress to Belleville to Houston, his practices are steady. So if you're selling in Texas, the Rainmaker is ready with a good deal. Give him a year and the purchase will look like a steal. He's our Rainmaker, our handshaker, our Tito's drinker. Please welcome Trey Tippett to the pod, everyone.
Oh, this is great, man.
Dwight.
Oh, Dwight.
Every
Who
time.
knew?
Every
time you
time
watch
I
that,
just get so
Rocky Balboa
surprised
video.
by this.
That's
I get-
awesome.
Oh,
That's good
man.
stuff.
So
Dwight.
with that being said, we've got to prep and start it because all in went all out. So we're gonna add
That's
something to it right
amazing.
here. So be prepared for when Pete gives the term full stop, which means to him that his mic just dropped. Craig will yell pencils down, so we will know it's the end of the round. And Trey the Agreeable will follow with the term. That's well said, even if it's some crazy idea from Craig. As for me, I'm the moderator who can barely get us to land the plane, especially since I think we're all insane. Culture Index says we should never put these four together, but our energy units will make us talk forever. The truth is that Pete started the pod and Craig gave Pete a heart, and Dwight brought in CI, and Trey shows us the ROI. We're the fearsome four, and if there's anything we can underscore, it's that we hope that this pod helps you build, scale, and more. So welcome to the pod, everyone.
Whoa, that was
Wow.
beautiful.
Dwight, I feel like we can just
Beautiful,
shut
Dwight.
down at this point.
Yeah, we
That's all-
should we should end this one.
We
It's
should
not
end
getting
it.
better.
Yeah, It's
Pencils
only
down.
going to be a letdown from here.
It's true. If you're listening, you might want to just tune out now.
Yeah.
Well, we got some good topics. We got some good
Okay.
stuff.
Well, then
I
don't tune
mean,
out.
There's got to be a little production in this process, so let's roll. All right. So first on the list, we got an interesting topic. I can give a little quick summary so everybody feels like we got an intro on the topic, but it relates to the one and only Blackrock getting into oral health / dental. That's the top of our list. For those who don't know, Blackrock is considered a risk management company, is fixed income institutional asset manager. It's now considered the world's largest asset manager. 10 trillion currently in its portfolio as of July of 2022. So needless to say, we're talking about a pretty significant involvement and interaction. So I would say what's interesting about this
Is this it right here, Dwight? The BlackRock purchases Paradigm?
That's right. So BlackRock,
Yeah, you know who they purchased in dental though, Pete, right?
Well, that is dental. Paradigm Oral Health.
Paradigm Oral Health is the parent company that goes along with that. Now, I will say, if you want some background on this, so it was started with
$900 million
David
deal.
Rallis, who is he did his DDS in 2004, his MD in 2008 from the Mayo, oral surgery guy. We'll fast forward a little bit, but needless to say, he established pretty nice EBITDA, 3 offices, EBITDA of 4.35 million. Initially got partnered with In Tandem, which is another smaller private equity group that basically In Tandem got them to this point where this acquisition is being considered at nearly, I'm not joking, $1 billion, 900 million.
900
plus.
million. Yeah. Holy shit. So it's
So
a tech company
basically-
too. Okay.
So you've got, what happened was it seemed like 4.35 in EBITDA. They got a 12x from Tandem for the first 3 offices. They only sold 50.1%. And then they took about 3 bites of the apple. They went from, and hear this, 3 to 75 offices in 36 months in oral surgery through acquisition, each time doing stock deals for equity. So they went 50-50 split, 60-40 split, 70-30 split. And now BlackRock has considered them for majority shareholdership at 18.3x multiple for just
Good
over
Lord.
900 million.
Yeah.
Now,
18.
18.3. Now, I want to explain something. First thing I would say, just my personal opinion, group like BlackRock doesn't just get involved to buy practices, right?
Right.
There's a platform that we're talking about here. There's Paragon, which is early on David, who's still helping run the company.
Paragon or Paradigm?
Paradigm.
Paragon
Is the
software.
piece of software that they also created that helps run. It's a practice management software that they've scaled. So these types of groups love SaaS companies, and that's really where they see the scale. So I think when you listen to these multiples, you're not talking about just buying practices. You're talking about buying a whole platform at which that scales not only oral surgery, but other things. They have a whole consulting platform that coaches.
So tons of verticals. Obviously are coming off of this.
Yeah. But it's interesting. I mean, obviously 36 months of scale is pretty astronomical, but I thought it was worth discussing because I think there's a lot of thoughts that get caught up in somebody saying someone's got bought out for $1 billion. And so I figured we'd talk about verticals. We talk about kind of how this impacts the industry. So let's throw down some thoughts. What do y'all got on this one?
I remember when Heartland got bought by the Canadian Teachers Union for $1 billion, and it was all over the headlines. Everyone was talking about it in the industry. How far we've come that I've never heard of this until you brought it up the other day, Dwight. You
didn't know that because DECA was acquired by Blackstone.
Well, I'm just saying I didn't know about $1 billion oral surgery deal that's like half tech and half. I'm just saying like the deals you were starting to get numb versus like remember when the teachers union bought that it flipped dentistry on its head. I remember hearing about it being like holy shit, here it comes, But Blackrock, as we all know, even in the downturn of even in COVID, remember Blackrock was being kind of scrutinized for buying all of the private homes. Right. They were trying to buy real estate and just gobble up all real estate. And everyone was saying, the goal is to let you own nothing and be happy. You're going to be a renter forever because we're going to price you out of home ownership. So to see what's BlackRock's AUM, assets under management, I think it's
10 trillion.
Oh, geez.
10
trillion with a T. Yeah.
So here's what's a little bit frightening about that. When someone who has that kind of clout, $1
billion ain't no thing.
The economy is not run by the government. The economy is run by Morgan Stanley and BlackRock and things like this, right? And so the clout,
Raytheon,
the clout that they can bestow on an industry. So if they wet their beak on this, and they all of a sudden like this seems pretty good. Dentistry seems like something we want to jump into. It could be. I don't know what it could be, honestly.
It'll just speed up the consolidation pathway by a major factor.
Right, but does it create a feeding frenzy, Craig, or do you think it's an open market? Right? Obviously, the more suitors are in the market, the more demand, right? The higher the price. So, but there's a limit. Like when you start getting into the 18s, that's tough to validate in terms of an EBITDA play.
I also think. Go ahead.
I think too, you've got fears of a recession. Obviously we're heading that way or in it. And you've got tech companies, big tech companies, which were always amazing performers, like repositioning themselves to say, we're going to be a slower growing company now. We don't expect these ridiculous, consistent double-digit quarter-over-quarter returns. So I think it focuses people like BlackRock and smarter money to say, okay, well, if it's not that sexy anymore to go tech, what can we do? If there's going to be stable returns on a tech company, why not go stable returns on dental as well? So I think there's a reset of expectations from the big financial powerhouses.
Yeah, to return to healthcare stability.
Right.
Yeah.
I was listening to something about with Michael Burry, who tweets a fair amount, and he was obviously The Big Short. The movie The Big Short was made about him, and he was basically saying how it's crazy that we have these companies that are worth $100 billion in the free market. He's talking tech and SaaS, yet they've yet to ever have profits. Right. He's like, it's this inversion of like value versus actually production of accretive value is just, he's like, it will not last. This will end badly is what he's saying. And so, Craig,
it's already ending. I mean, Facebook and Amazon and Apple, they're all laying people off and, positioning to their investors that expect more modest returns, no more ice skating rinks in your corporate headquarters and free lunches and all that stuff. I mean, that put pressure on all of us. There's definitely a more sobering time coming in.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
But I think that bodes well for us because
because it's a shift back, like where tech was the sexy beast in the room, so to speak. Now it's going back to let's get back to base hits and at businesses that actually make something.
Yeah, well, if you have the Amazons of the world saying, "Hey, we're gonna be a base hit company going forward," now it's all of a sudden, these other people that are smarter than all of us are just like, well, if it's going to be base hits, let's go to healthcare because it's a little bit more immune to consumer trends and prices and stuff like that.
I like that comment you just said about smarter than us. I'm always amazed because you'll hear some of these incredible individuals that are out there selling, right? And some of the greatest entrepreneurs in the world, Elon Musk, and they're out there, and when they're selling, people are like, nah, I'm going to hold on. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And it's almost as if for some reason, even within our own industry, this type of news can come up and we act like, oh, well, that never will affect me here, or never affect me here in Houston, or affect me in Texas or somewhere else. And I think we have to have our eyes open to understand that consolidating is happening, and it's going to happen at different rates. But there are different ways to look at this. I mean, this is not a simple turnkey acquisition. Nobody should quote somebody got an 18.3 multiple for dentistry. That's just not what it is. Now, I do agree that they're looking more at us and saying, hey, here's some bread and butter industries that are looking sexier because they're more stable. They survived well through COVID because there's a necessity. There's a healthcare necessity. So it stabilizes their portfolio in a lot of different ways, which is why I think it's going to create some attractivity to our industry. But do I think that it's sped up as far as when we talk about application to the listener right now? Like I would say, yeah. Do I think that if before we were thinking 7 years out for, a significant percentage of the industry, or 50% or 40% of the industry being consolidated, this might speed up.
So you think this speeds up the timeline for consolidation is what you're saying?
I think so.
And so net, do you think it's a positive?
Why do you think that happens?
Yeah, I'm curious.
What makes you?
I agree with him, by the way.
I think because when people start realizing that you've got inflationary money, you've got large groups that are really struggling. Well, one we're going to talk about here, this next step, that relates to the fact that they have way too much variable interest rate debt, and those things start collapsing. More consolidation is going to happen with some of these groups, and some of them are also these large DSOs. They're struggling as well in the same way because they created their whole business model in a zero interest rate environment. And it was a significant component. You've got to realize that's not just going to go away. And so in my opinion, do I think that it sped that up? Yes. I mean, do I think it's going to go to 100? No. 100% no. But do I think that it's going to speed up the process of what everybody kept quoting was the next 7 years, 8 years? I think it'll be more like 5 when the big dogs like this get in.
Let me ask you a question, though, Dwight. So let's just pick apart that one thing you said. So if you build your business model and it only works because of zero interest rates and you're using debt, why does that not collapse things from inside? So why is it speeding things up? Why don't you think it would take some of the big players out and make
I think it takes the big players out, but big players within our industry.
That's what I'm saying.
Meaning some of the DSOs that did this incorrectly, small direct club, groups like that did it and focused on building their models in that mindset, created a lot of variable rates.
I'm just talking about DSOs. I think when you bring in small direct club, there's a whole other set of challenges why they failed. I don't think interest rate had to do anything with it.
Well, my question there is that a lot of their debt is variable interest rates as far as DSOs. And therefore, if people like groups like Blackrock are getting involved at this point in time, it's because it's going to get more savory as we go along. And I think that now that they show their interest, there's other people that are going to be considering this.
I agree with all that. I'm just concerned. I agree with all that. I'm just concerned about, are there DSOs out there, large DSOs, that their debt ratios are so high and it all worked at 0, but it doesn't work at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of interest rate. And then what happens to those? And why does that not slow the consolidation train down?
It won't slow the consolidation down because there's always a bigger fish to eat
them, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Yeah. Until there's not. There's musical chairs at that point in time.
I mean, that's all that recaps are, though, Trey. Right?
Yeah,
you buy something in hopes that, it's the greater fool theory almost. It's just like crypto, right? You buy it in hopes that someone else is going to buy your bag for more than you paid for it. That's what it is. I mean, I don't think that's the thing exactly with crypto, because there's obviously some merit around it, but like that's the arbitrage, the kind of we're talking about here. I mean, that's the whole reason that anyone would do this. It's not because they have this fascination with dentistry. It's that they see leverage, they see arbitrage opportunities, and our industry is ripe because of the lack of consolidation, right? Because of the fragmentation in the industry.
What's the newest data? Do any of you know about what percentage of our industry is consolidated? I know it's hard to find that number, but do you guys know?
I think it's around 40%. That's where I'm going right now in my head. The data,
I remember
unfortunately,
being
Craig,
30.
is lagged, right? So it's going to give you, by the time you see the data, it's probably in 2020 or 2021. And like, I haven't seen current data. So if someone has that they know it, put it in the comments or something, or ping us just so we could know, or they can send us the article, because my gut, and I don't know where I heard this from, and Dwight, you're kind of echoing the same sentiment, is that it's around 40% now. But I think that might be a little high, guys.
That
honestly.
seems high.
My guess is that we're still in the 30s, but that would be my.
I think that.
So when do we define it as consolidated? I mean, what's the number that you think it's going to hit?
The majority has to be consolidated in order for you to say it's I would say. I mean, that doesn't mean that there's no more runway left, but I think at 55 or 60% consolidated, meaning part of a DSO or larger group, then I would say the industry's been consolidated, but there's still plenty of runway.
I'd say 80%.
Isn't Derm like 80% consolidated?
Yeah, the tipping point is where the is 80%.
It's the tipping point's already been met. It's just that we're surviving.
The tipping point in the definition, fragmented versus consolidated, is what I'm saying.
I mean, if you
clarify, you're talking about two different things. So the tipping point, as far as when we within the industry or across the board start to sense it or know about it, is earlier, like you said, 21 to 22%. But he's talking about the tipping point of when we consider like that is the default, is consolidation. He thinks it's closer to 80% or something, to that vast majority. So a super majority is what you're saying, Peter.
Yes.
Yeah. And is there any force that you can think of that stops this?
No.
Nothing.
There's
nothing stops us.
Us belly aching, us saying we won't do it. There's nothing that can stop it. It's inevitable. All we can do, in my opinion, is make sure we're shepherding good stewards of it, meaning that it's not just run by people who are trying to drive down profits. I think that's where you can really lay. If you just say we're not doing it, and you may be like to Trey's point, you may be musical chairs, and there may be no chair potentially. I'm not saying that everyone needs to do it. I'm just saying, Craig, we can't avoid this. There's too much power in the financial system.
Well, I mean, controlling the reimbursement rates of the insurance companies, controlling the supply costs and your goods that we all use. I mean, the economic factors are just too compelling. I'm gonna read something real quick just in response to this, because your question made me remember. Regards to, there was a Rutgers article that got put out just recently, discussing kind of the impact of these variable rates and carrying most of your debt for several organizations throughout multiple industries. Long story short, I'll read a chunk of it. It says, this is a section that it discusses high bankruptcy risk. It goes like this. It says, the burden of high interest payments is expected to lead more companies filing for bankruptcies. Moody's projects that 3.7% of companies with junk rated debt will file for bankruptcy in August 2023, up from 2.1% the year earlier. Among highly indebted companies facing this bankruptcy risk are healthcare provider Surgery Center Holdings, dentistry operator Heartland Dental. Oh, yeah.
Energy infrastructure service.
They actually call out Heartland Dental in that article?
Yeah, specifically.
Wow.
Wand Nuco 3, according to Moody's. So even when I'm looking at it, I'm looking at all these reps and all these discussions. It specifically discusses them because it wasn't too long ago that their acquisition model was so massive, but it was taking advantage of those rates. Right. And, I'm not saying that they don't have a methodology to try and curve this, but there are several groups that are.
You're saying when rates are zero, Dwight, it's a lot easier to propel your model, right?
Yes. Not to mention it. Everybody sat in that boardroom and said, "Now's the time." Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I mean, let's make it happen. Let's acquire. Let's go. The problem is did they taper that off fast enough? It's unlikely. Although
let's take a layer back, like specifically Heartland. When I get those mailers. Like I'm sure everyone in this list that's listening gets this one as well. The marketing position for Heartland Dental, at least maybe I have a certain demographic they're hitting with special marketing. So maybe you can comment what you're getting, but I'm getting a postcard where the guy is dressed half in scrubs and half with a fishing rod.
Same.
And it's like, you getting that? Well, maybe we're old men. So what are you getting? Are you getting that flyer too? It's basically this marketing position of like, do you hate your life? Do you want to quit your business and fish more? So like, what business would the four of us acquire where the producer, the main talent, like, oh, you want to just disappear? Great. I'll buy your pizza store. Brilliant. You're the most renowned pizza maker ever. You want to go fishing? Great. I'll buy the dough and the sauce and you go off and fish. So like, does Heartland really have just a rate problem, or do they have a strategy wherein they just figure if they keep acquiring, they'll do well? Excuse me. But they don't have to worry about the people that they've acquired long term, like the same store sales growth.
Once that acquisition stops,
right?
Yes,
it's like a shark that has to keep swimming. Like what I would be concerned about if you're trying to buy me and encouraging me to leave and go fish in your marketing, I'd be concerned about your business.
It's so true, Craig.
Like let's just get fundamental. Forget rates and forget Moody's and all this bullshit we're talking about.
Yeah,
Right?
instead it should be
blah blah blah.
It should be a postcard. Is like, hey, do you want to kick ass with us for the next 10 years? Like, let's do this.
Are you frustrated about your business systems? Do you think you could extract more profit out of your practice? Are you frustrated about your supply costs going up? Are you upset about the clear aligner costs you have to pay? Join us. We'll use economies of scale and we'll crush your market together. Let's go. Instead of like, do you want to retire? Great.
You want to
get out of here? We'll buy your shit. We'll leave whatever's left over when you take off.
I can't wait. Honestly, the goal of this podcast is going to be the cease and desist one day, and that's when I'll know.
Well, if that didn't do it, I don't know what did. Listen, I love
a formal letter.
Yeah. I'm not allowed to comment on that. I'm in arbitration.
I'll post it everywhere.
Oh, jeez. Well, listen, I'm just saying I'm getting that marketing. Maybe they could take this podcast and actually change their marketing. It would help their company a lot. If you got a postcard from Heartland that said those types of things, wouldn't you be more inclined? I mean, maybe we're in our own echo chambers and we're different types of dentists. But like, I don't want to buy your business if you want to bolt from it.
Yeah, the avatar. If we go back to marketing for a second, right? Everyone talks like, well, who's your target market? And if your if that's your target market, the avatar of someone who's got 1 foot out the door as the primary producer in the business that's the cash flow is predicated on, the business you're trying to buy, that seems flawed to me. I agree with that. Right.
Yeah, you've been working for 25 years. You kicked ass. We're gonna put a brand new D22 student in your place. Go fishing. He'll figure it all out. You know what happens?
Let's roll on.
All right, cease and desist.
I love it. I think that's amazing. Yeah. But I mean, it's worth discussing. All right, so we got Small Direct Club.
That's
a Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street
Direct Club doesn't have this. Can we call this episode cease and desist? What are we doing here, guys?
Let's do it.
What are we doing?
We're just kicking a bunch of beehives.
Well, I think these are the topics that get that hit a lot of us in dentistry just on our phone, or someone pings us and is like, "Oh, have you seen this? Hey, look at this." I mean, the title of what's on here, in case you're just listening and not on the not watching us, Small Direct Club doesn't have much time. Back to straighten itself out.
Great
from Wall Street Journal, which is kind of interesting. So the demand for the company's teeth straightening falls.
They're burning cash. Burning cash. They just raised $225 million in April, and like the burn rate, I actually found the burn rate. So much so that Wall Street Journal the recommendation is sell. Let me get out now. They IPO'd it over $20, and now their price right now is around 1.62 at the time of this writing, August 22nd. Who knows I wonder what it is now. Type in SDC as a stock.
It's under $1 right now.
Is it really, Trey?
I want to say I looked it up last night. It's right at 80 cents. I'll look it up right now.
So in the time between August 22nd, it was 162, and then today it's gone that much. So here's why. Here's why, guys. I found this balance sheet. Can you guys see it?
That's fine. Go ahead.
Well, basically, it goes year by year. This is in millions, of course, and so this is the losses in millions per quarter. There's only been one profitable quarter, and that was in 2019. Everyone has been
year down 27.78% in revenue, 20% in net income, And net profit margin down 66.56%.
The adjusted EBITDA in Q3 of 2021 was negative 70 million.
And to endorse that cease and desist concept, I think this is why Reddit is getting so pressed to short this stock, to go after it.
Oh, really?
Further. Yeah. So it's a big push right now. Reddit's
It's not like one of the
over
Wall Street play, like, you know, the Wall Street
the
bets.
GameStop and
Yeah,
the
is it that?
It's going down that direction now.
Oh, wow, that'd be
Well,
great
then
for
you
them.
may want to buy it. Then
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah, exactly. So that's what you're looking at. We got to
if it
short
becomes a
We
Was
gotta
it
short it.
AMC movie theater again?
Yeah. Again, talk about cease and desist. But
no, you might want to buy the long option then.
That's right.
Hey, let's not get into this domain of
Let's
financial
not do
advice. Let's not
So
pretend. that
listen
we,
to this. It says, despite 377 million in cash and
I said
equivalents, the company also has over 716 million in long-term debt, on which they need to pay more than $50 million a year in interest expense. Here's the variable component once again.
Yeah, exactly.
As
It
the
was
economy
30
heads
million,
into
yeah.
a rising interest rate environment, paying a high percentage of gross profits in interest expenses implies significant bottom line issues for this company. So for the third quarter, the firm is forecasting shipments of 83,000 to 87,000 aligners orders, right?
Oh, wow.
So representing an increase in 49%. This is what they're forecasting, not what their expectations, what the real is. From the second quarter, Smile Directs Club price to sale and price to book stands at 3.1 and 10 times respectively. So according to this, it says, based on the latest financial disclosures, Smile Direct Club has a probability of bankruptcy of 77%. This is 77.87% higher than that of the healthcare sector and 112% higher than that of medical instruments and supply industry.
Meanwhile, so this is just facts, not opinion. Meanwhile, Invisalign is posting higher profitability than ever because they are involving the doctor,
right?
In my opinion, right?
Yeah.
Well, listen, you know, we're going down this rabbit hole of like looking at interest rates again and how the macroeconomics affect this company. But like when Smile Direct came around, I was, you know, very intrigued because I was surprised that patients would be willing to have no doctor in their in their process. So, you know, naturally I would go on, you know, their Instagram page and look at things and see how things were going. And for my purview, all I could see was really upset people. So like I was seeing a lot of, you know, and again, it might be selection bias because people don't come to us and be like, look at the result I got with Smile Direct Club or with clear aligners at home.
Right. That's
they
true.
come to us because they're having a problem. So we're not really seeing the true scope of it's great or if it's not. But, you know, so we have observational biases because they're coming back. But I am not surprised, you know, based on what limited information I had about it, that they're not doing well. And then you compound it with a higher interest rate and an aggressive growth strategy and all that stuff. That makes sense to me. Are you guys surprised? I mean, if we would have talked 2 years ago, would you have thought that SDC is going to be a great company?
No.
Take your ego out. Take your hurt out.
You can't think like a doctor on that.
Don't think like a doctor.
About being a doctor.
Don't think like a doctor. I'm just coming at as a consumer. Forget about like, oh, I can't believe they don't want me to supervise or clean check.
I remember years ago having a conversation with both Pete and Craig on this topic. And it wasn't about, obviously there was a generational demand. They want simplicity. They don't want to have to go see the doc, all these other things, which we got. But all of us said the same thing, which was like, but is that a good long-term strategy?
Right.
Like that's where it is. And at the end of the day, most of our businesses are like, when we add certain things, it's like a quick fix for a quote September or a quick fix for this and that. All we talked about in that previous podcast was build long-standing solutions with good business models that, you know, make sense for the care of your patients and the longevity of your business.
Which is
there was
really
nothing
nice
in this that made longevity.
Dwight, that's really naive to say that because we don't have investor pressure. SDC has investor pressure.
Exactly.
So we sit here from the really privileged position to say like we have our coffers of finances and we can afford to make long-term great decisions. When you have private equity or investor pressure, they don't care about what you're planning to do in 36 months.
Right.
All the shit we buy is like, oh, next year that'll be great, or 2 years from now I'm buying a new CBCT and not thinking about how it's going to affect my bottom line for next quarter.
Yes, but they have to diversify their business model to have some level of longevity. because to double down on something that eventually needs to be fixed by a doctor, eventually those generational gaps don't
one
last
thing
forever.
I think, let me tell you that what I think the silver lining of an SDC is, and I'm just using an SDC as a placeholder for all direct-to-consumer clear aligners. It made us dinosaur dentists say, you know what, we are making our patients go through a lot of freaking hoops here.
100%.
And why are we bringing them in every freaking 4 weeks to check their aligner progress? And why do we make them go through all this stuff? People don't, want that. What are you doing, Peter?
I'm taking I'm
Taking a little selfie of us.
No, he was doing a selfie. He was coming back.
That's really fucking distracting. So it's I don't know. I just think it was a net positive on dentistry.
I agree. It made us better.
It made us better. But I just think that, having, patients taking their own impressions. I know the first 100 impressions I took as a trained dentist were clinically unacceptable.
But I'm gonna extend that a little further, because I want to make sure that everybody's listening understands how our business has changed due to direct to consumer influences. So a good example I know you talk about all the time is now you see your patients a whole lot less, because there's not this friction of necessity to see them all the time, right? That's something that you talk about. We did the same. We implemented that a long time ago, but it made a big difference. And you don't need to always have that patient constantly coming in. And there was almost this expectation, this almost doctor pride, like, I need to see you to make sure it's, and you hand them the next set of aligners, they move on. And it's just kind of an awkward scenario, or they're just seeing your assistant. You're like, well, why can't they have them for a month, 2 months, right? I mean, when it first started, the idea was to have it even more frequently. What else are you all seeing that we've done, in all our practices, that was an influence of direct to consumer marketing?
I think virtual consultations, like Peter's doing. I think virtual dentistry, Zoom calls, FaceTiming. I'm doing all that. I mean, COVID plus DTC really made the patient experience more favorable for them. I realized how many things were just out of my own ego, like my doctor ego saying, like, I got to make sure they're tracking and blah, blah, blah. Like, you can do that over Zoom call. And, we say it's a 5-minute appointment or a 10-minute appointment, but think about it for the patient. They may live 25 minutes. They had to get a babysitter. It's an hour and a half out of
take
their
off
schedule.
from work.
Yeah, super inconvenient.
I would also add to that the concept of digital scans, which was a huge push, right? They weren't going in or, realized, hey, you could come in, now it's expected. Better fit, better digital scanning, things like that. That was another piece that a lot of practices took on.
So going back to, as I dug into this topic a little bit, they are kind of pinning their hopes on this scanning, because right now you go in and get scanned at a center, a Smile Direct center. So they've got new tech coming out, which is kind of like their Hail Mary is using your phone potentially.
Wow.
For the scan. So if that
works.
Can
that work?
Greg, who knows?
We'll find out.
We'll find out.
But I mean,
that's why the probability, it's still, to me, it's a Hail Mary. And if it works, like, kudos to them. I love when people innovate, and, everyone loves an underdog. But right now, as it sits, it's tough. It's a tough situation. Yeah.
What was quoted from the CFO, Kyle Wales, the short-term headwinds from residual impacts after the April cyber attack, which, by the way, they had a massive cyber attack.
Oh, shit.
The lasting economic effects from COVID on our target demographic and the slower scaling of some of our new international markets due to COVID prevented us from achieving our anticipated second quarter results. The international component, I think, is an interesting part. They just made a massive switch to their enterprise efforts. Smile Direct Club will halt operations in Mexico and in several other countries such as Germany, Spain, and New Zealand. It said it will continue to operate and grow in the US, Canada, and as well as Australia, France, Ireland, and the UK. Expansions to other countries are halted for now, it says.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Very interesting review strategy on Smile Direct Club, by the way. I'm just like perusing the reviews. They've got really great reviews. So my local one here has 1,083 reviews, all at 4.9. And I mean, this is anecdotal. I'm just kind of perusing through it. But the first appointment is like, oh my God, I'm so excited. 5 stars. Monica was so great. So excited to begin my journey. You see a lot of those. And then it's smattered in. So they're winning on the patient experience at the upfront. So that's another thing to wow people at that level. that is actually creates a lot of headwind for the journey.
Yeah, the social optics look like, okay, this is good then.
But that's great. That's a great
right.
takeaway for all of us. Imagine if your first experience is so awesome, it kind of creates a halo effect for all further experiences.
That's huge.
Yep. Okay. We got one other item.
Well, and honestly,
who are we going after next? Disney? Disney?
Was,
pick one. Let's roll.
Yeah. This was born, what we're about to talk about next was born in an interesting discussion on our last, on our long mastermind call.
That's right.
Where one of the masterminds was talking about like, hey, I like this practice. I want to buy it. I really feel like I should because my interest lock is going to expire. And we all just like, whoa, time out, pump the brakes. What? Like that was the redeeming thing. And so I thought it was an interesting, Trey and I commented a lot, I feel like, on that. And I thought it was an interesting dilemma that if you're basing your decision on what the interest rate is, then it's probably like, if that's the, like, it's like Craig's story with his dad. I love this story. Like, what? I hired this new assistant, Craig. She's awesome. You're like, why is he great? She's like, I don't know. She's great. Like, why do you really love her? He's like, well, she's $12 an hour. She's really cheap. And that's why she's so great. And you're like, wait, Dad, that doesn't make a great assistant. That's not a great hire. You just filled a warm body.
What this poor guy was doing, and I think we saw his way through it. He's like, I'm going to marry this girl. Well, why? Because in April, I have a reservation to reserve a hotel for a wedding ball, a wedding room, and it's a non-refundable $20,000 deposit. Well, how long have you known her? Well, I mean, only 6 weeks, but the wedding's coming up. It's like, like don't put the horse. And that's kind of what we all
get in our own way.
We all
the guy who brought this up is I know him very well. He's a genius. He's a genius mind, right? But sometimes you get in your own echo chamber of like, I think I should just do it. And like this timeline is ticking. And then you hear the news that interest rates are rising and these are the best. So I don't know. It's like your brain. The brain works, Peter. Like you attach to the destination, and then you get all evidence to support your decision. Like you get confirmational bias.
Confirmation bias.
So all he did was say, I got a great interest rate. I should buy this practice. And then from then on in, he put blinders on. Boom. And then we started poking away during the mastermind. His logic, we realized at the crux of it, he's just like, I just got good, cheap money.
Yeah.
We've got good, cheap money. There's so many assets to buy with cheap money.
But I think that's a great conversation. Like, how is it what we put into our minds from news and media and what surrounds us literally decides how we run our business? Because you're right. I mean, the concept here is that interest rates at their current state and what they're looking like are making people think it's going to get worse. Therefore, well, it goes both ways. Some people are like, oh, I'm just going to wait. And they're scared to death and they don't
wait till it goes back down.
Right. It's to some degree. Or on the other end, it's kind of like, I got to do it now. And come to find out, even in this case scenario, when we dug deep, it's not only a completely different business model. And yes, there's multiple models within dentistry. Just because it's a dental office doesn't mean it's the same as the one you built. They're very, very different. A Medicaid office in pediatrics is very, very different than an oral surgery office. Very different from general bread and butter dentistry. So a PPO office,
I respected him going through the model, right? And look, there is a point in where it is concerning because there's only so much, even a well-run practice, there's only so much profitability built in, right?
Agreed.
And if your debt service starts exceeding and being very, erosive to that profitability, it becomes like, well, I may wait. I don't know.
Right, but it's better to buy an asset at the right price with a high interest rate, as we said on the call, than a poor asset with a low interest rate. Because once you pay the price, you can always refinance later. You can always refinance debt later. But if he overpays, and really, when we boiled this down more, there's another layer why he's doing this. It was for his wife. Mm-hmm. So he's buying her a job because she's driving too far.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're saddling your wife with, all the traditional duties that she's got, and now she's got to run a practice. So it's just very important to have good people around, whether it's your friends or the mastermind, to just kind of challenge it.
And then the other context was like, hey, but I've got space to expand my current office. Like, maybe should I just do that? And we were like, what? Start swinging the hammer after this call.
Yeah. Right? We literally said, go knock a wall down just while you're doing it.
Pushing it just right now. Go push it down. Did you guys watch the?
Yeah. Do you want to play the clip?
I mean, I don't know if it'll come through. Are you guys seeing this?
Yeah, just play it though. The audio.
I don't know.
Fine. It'll look.
Can you hear that?
No.
No.
You cannot.
You have to put it on the actual screen, even though it'll be split.
I have to put it on the screen.
Yeah,
Okay.
the way you did earlier.
Share your screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go. I have to add to the stream. Let's see. Can you?
I
guys
won't call
hear
you
it?
what you called me for using the
Well,
wrong
you
name.
know it. It's tough to be. It's
I'll
tough
call
to
you.
be.
He called you numbnuts when he sent. He
That
literally
hurt. That
Peter
hurt,
sent
Peter.
a link
You
to
heard him.
Dwight and I, like with a link saying, "Go to this link," and then we clicked on it, and now somehow we're the numbnuts.
Yeah.
Well, somehow Trey Tippett was in the right place at the right time. All
Trey
right,
Tippett
let's see.
had something.
got
He
it.
had Morgan
He was
come
a-
in there
he
and
was
put that
asleep.
shit
Let's
on.
see
But I'm
if
a
you can-
technological genius.
Can you guys
You're
hear
just a genius
this?
in general?
All right, let's listen to it. Go.
Can you hear that?
No.
It's not started there.
No.
No, that's why we can't have nice things, man.
Okay. So I'm gonna post the video. I
Are we going to
hope you-
reenact this?
No, but it's actually it was sent to me by a past masterminder, Andy Letcher, who again a very genius mind. So he's like, "Hey, watch this video," and I had no context. But basically, Craig, I've been getting into kind of learning more about, you had to educate me on kind of the war. I really was kind of oblivious to the potential of war and the potential of, the consequences globally of what this would do, not just to the geopolitical stuff, but like the pipeline and interest rates and all these things, right? And the flight to safety for people to go into dollars. So I don't usually like, when I saw this video and Andy sent it, I was like, a Rotary Club video? Like, I am not watching this. Like, not watching this.
So
And
Rotary
then this
Club,
guy-
another cease and desist. Just
What do you
kidding.
think we said about you when you sent it to us?
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, usually not the most stimulating, but this guy's name is Peter Zehan. And he kind of went through and was just describing all the collateral damage that could happen, the probabilities of all this. It was fascinating.
Of
and I
what?
am not. I mean, honestly, I don't want to. I feel like I will do it in injustice, Craig, of trying to describe it because I understand the consequences in my head. I have a hard time articulating.
I know, but what's the subject that we're talking about? Because I never
Like,
watched this.
it related to a lot of components on interest rates. So the question was,
Oh, so it wasn't about the war. It wasn't about.
Well, it
well,
was about the
it's in
war.
there. Yeah.
It was basically, Craig, is that nothing lives by itself, right? There's everything is connected, and so look, he went so far as to say like the war, and then the Ukraine, and then these pipelines, and then Russia, and then the winter, and then all these things, right? Only to then say like then went into China and start talking about China and Taiwan. Now China's on the brink of collapse, and then that everyone's now going to be flighting to America to flight to safety from the U.S. dollar.
Yeah. I think these conversations are so funny, by the way, because what is unfortunately happening, we sent 80,
Well, you didn't watch the video.
right?
So
but 80 billion to Ukraine, and Biden saying things about the one China policy, which we've always said we're never going to touch, and Biden saying if you do something, to China, if China invades Taiwan, we're gonna step up militarily, and what we're doing in the Ukraine, it is literally like this is interest rate won't matter because that's like Armageddon. And no one's talking about this, which is even crazier. I feel like this is the craziest time where Rotary Club's like, there'll be a flight to safety and you might want to diversify in gold. Like, that's not the result of this conflict. It either escalates or it goes away. But if it escalates and they're talking about interest rates and crap like that, Peter, are you frozen? Peter froze. I was like, wow, he's ribbon.
He's not frozen. He's just frozen.
Oh, I thought a screen was frozen, but I do. It's just amazing that we're on such a escalatory path for a nuclear conflict, and no one talks about that. But they're talking about like, oh, it'll be a cold winter, and then New York has like these public service announcements where like the smiling lady, like saying like, okay, so there's been a nuclear attack. Here's what you need to do. Stay inside, go to your basement. And she's smiling like somehow it's not going to be like it's manageable. Like there's some sort of, and there's no discourse on this. The media's not talking about it. No one's talking about it, but there's like secondary conversations about economic impacts, which I just find, incredibly strange to me. So that's why this is surreal to hear people talking about, and I don't even know what it is, but I know it's about like, here's how to manage your portfolio when World War III happens. Fuck your portfolio. There's
I think the other interesting part, this was actually brought up in the All In podcast, was the difficulty of, obviously there's bipolarity right now going on throughout the parties. And we've transferred parties from Democratic to Republican 7 times in our history. And that's part of what's going on right now. And he brings this up in this video as well, where there's just this, such extremes that there's not a lot of practicality, and there's warmongers that are pushing along the process.
On both sides. On both sides.
What's interesting about it is in the end, to fund these wars, this massive inflationary problem and these massive variable interest rates are going to make it difficult to fund the actual wars.
But
that's the
reality. But the problem
is,
Dwight, is the escalation is happening faster than the interest rates are going to catch up. So we're having Biden say things and the White House walks it back. But like, who is the White House? I thought who is, like, when Biden says something like, yeah, we're going to intervene militarily with China, that's poking a bear. Or are you saying we're writing blank checks to Ukraine?
I think that relates
till every last inch is there.
Yeah. But in this video, he specifically points that concept out, and he talks about interest because they ask Rotary clubs. There are a bunch of business owners who are like, okay, what is it that we should be looking at? And his comment was simple and clear. And I wrote a little snippet when I listened to it in case if we went over this. And he said something along the lines of, credit will not be this low in our lifetime. And I thought that was a massive, impactful statement.
And that's what I was. Thank you for landing the plane, Dwight.
Yeah, because I'm trying. That was part of my intro.
With the seagull in the room.
So we have not gotten to an average credit cost for the next 40 years. It says he noted, need to look at your balance sheets, and if you need to borrow 3 years from now, it may be too late. The only exception is capital income that's coming out from the U.S. And then he goes into these other issues where a lot of productivity, so production and equipment and supplies that are built outside of the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. You can expect supplies from Germany to start drying up because of the conflicts that they're dealing with in the next 18 months, and China in the next 36. So it'll be harder to build more supply.
He's like, if you want a Beamer, get it now, because there won't be any more ever.
Right. But there may not be parts to fix your Beamer later. Right.
It's funny. Craig and I talked about this years ago in our mastermind. I don't know if you guys remember. And it was like, look, if you guys need capital and you want to refinance, like, now's the time to do it, because that's when it was post-COVID, and I was like, refinance your house. And we were telling mastermind, refinance, recalify.
I told everyone, like, even Erica bought a car and her car rate was like 2.2%. I was like, please take your cash. She's like, no, I don't want a big payment. Like, people just have such an aversion towards debt. I think there's so many David Ramsey types that are like, debt is bad at all costs.
My point of bringing all this up and then trying to share this video was drawing the context of the mastermind comment of the interest rate, is that we all assume that we're going back to the norm of what we grew up in, right? We had this 15
it was our
years
norm.
of just, that's the era that we grew up in. It's like, money's free, money's cheap, debt is cheap. And he's saying, like, that it may never be as cheap as it is currently right now. And if it's not, how are you recalibrating that based on current market data? And I just think it's important to just be aware of these things, right? Pick your head up out of the sand is what I always say to people. Like, even mainly I use that in crypto, but just kind of be aware of what's going on around you. And not that these are fulfilling prophecies with certainty, but it would be nice to just draw your own Monte Carlo scenarios of saying, like, if this happens, what will I do? If this happens, what will I do? If this happens, should I expand? If this happens, should I not expand? Like, I am constantly having conversations with myself in my own head about, like, the contingencies of things.
Lots of conversations.
Lots of conversations.
Do you answer yourself back though?
Yes.
He moves to the other chair though,
but not out loud.
That makes it less weird.
I don't make it
jump from chair to chair.
Jump from chair to chair. It's okay.
But I just sorry, I went off on my rant.
No.
It's okay. You went off on a rant for something that you had not watched the video I send, and therefore wasted a bunch of time. So but
you talked about the war. You said the war. And I think these conversations.
No, you asked me what the video was about. I told you it started with this, and it was going all the way through. And you
Trey
just
wants to say something.
You just
wanted
to
the first word. This is his
quiet.
First word. He's
no. So the idea of me being quiet is if I chime in with my opinion, we'll have no podcast. Period.
No.
Go
a lot
for
of
it.
conflict.
Well, let's go.
Everybody talking over each other.
What I liked about the video is that most people are sitting around with this mentality, which I think is really interesting to discuss, because a lot of the docs that are attracted to this podcast or listen or things to that degree are younger docs
Yeah.
that have also lived through a time. Every time you do that, I feel like I got to lean up.
I know. Me too.
It's a time. We got to wear our COVID mask. Hold on.
Cover my mouth.
He's masking me. He wants me to stop talking. But these docs, you have to realize a lot of us have grown in zero interest rate
environments.
And lifestyles personal, meaning I want to make this really personal. And when it was bad, it got better. Mentality. You get what I'm saying? And so it's everybody's like, hey, bullish, because then the truth is
bailouts, you're saying, right? When it was bad,
correct,
2008, the government stepped in. When it got bad with COVID, guess what happened? The government stepped in.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, we haven't really
essentially an up and to the right mentality that you think it always continues that way.
That's right.
Well, 2008 was never really fully addressed. It was just kicked down the line a bit.
Yeah.
So, the government pays out. So I found it interesting. So one last comment, because it's a good summary, is last night I saw a quick recording of the IMF release, just kind of a global perspective for 2023 when they released it. I thought that was interesting. So global growth for 2022, they're projecting will remain at 3.2%, while the projection for 2023 is now considerably forecast to be lowered to 2.7%. The 2023 slowdown will be broad-based, and the three largest economies, the US, China, and the European area, will continue to stall. In short, the worst is yet to come. Global growth can come down to nearly 2%, which is the lowest historical worldwide global growth in our history, and then since tracked, I'm sure. And most of this comes from the European market due to the war impact. Global inflation is expected to peak at 9.5% in the third quarter of 2022. And we saw, and then before decelerating to 4.1% by 2024, which goes back to those 18 months that we've been talking about in this pod several times before, and kind of the expectation. I mean, what do we do as practices? We rely on being consistently connected to our patients. The same thing that's made us successful will continue to make us successful. Call your patients at the end of the day. Keep an eye on your KPIs. Do good morning huddles. Follow through it sounds crazy for me to take global all the way down to the individual practice, but that's what we've got to understand. Like, this is the
only thing you have control over.
Yes. Yeah. What do you have control over? And that's what we need to focus on when we're talking about these big picture items, because if not, they're too overwhelming.
Trey, Craig, you've talked enough.
I'd rather. Well, let me just say one thing. I'd rather be a dentist in those types of times than like a jewelry salesperson. Sure. Teeth are really, really important, and when you're in pain, you still take care of this. We're a little bit more immune, but Trey, please.
It's the back to healthcare mentality. I agree with that, with what Dwight said, and I think that what you have to always remember is that it's why you don't write a vision for 5-10 years out, because you don't know what's going to happen. So all this stuff that happens now, and one of the things you always hear at this point is this is unprecedented, or I've been through a lot in my life, but I've never seen anything like this. But I bet if you go back at any given downturn, someone's saying this is unprecedented. There's always something brand new, something unprecedented, something that's going to, rock the boat at a level we've never seen before. And we always solve our own problems until, granted,
5 to 10 year plans, Trey, might not be bad idea, but you can't put it on a shelf for 10 years and expect it. So you may have to revisit it every year. Is what I'm saying.
Do it at a very, very high level if you're going to do it that. If there's too much, you couldn't have seen COVID. You can't predict the war happening.
Yeah. All right.
Check.
J Cal, should we wrap, J Cal?
I thought that was a great pod. I think it's nice to hear general thoughts that are hitting everybody today, and I was relatively nice, but most important, we will get to hang out again in Cabo this next week and get to be with the masterminders, which will give us a lot of fun stuff to talk about for the next pod. So we're gonna do one from Cabo, correct?
Yes, it might, and it might be under the influence of tequila, just in case.
By might, that's more predictable than anything in the recession.
Craig and I did that way back in the day. I'm not sure.
We remember that.
How did it turn out?
I don't remember that.
I don't think it's good for me. I think alcohol.
Yeah, you were losing your train of thought. Like,
Yeah.
I do remember that. Like, you're like,
Yeah.
what was I saying? I'm
was
like,
more-
dude,
I
we're
always say
lo-
people drink to feel like I do normally because I'm just uninhibited and don't give a crap. But then you get alcohol in me, I turn into a total different
Like
person.
a
I get really in
zombie.
my head. Yeah. Like literally, we only had like 2 or 3 beers, and it was like halfway through. I'm like, oh shit, I can't even
Yeah,
concentrate.
weren't y'all at like
Where was
Pete's
I?
We were in
Lake
his
House?
lake
I think they were
house,
at the
yeah.
lake house, right? And
Yeah.
I remember
Oh,
the
yeah, yeah,
podcast
yeah.
because it was just a slurry of who knows what was going
yeah,
on.
it was
But,
a long,
hey,
it was a long day.
That's
Let's do
entertaining.
a tequila one.
All right, everybody. We'll catch you guys next time.